they went down to Salt Fork State Park here in Ohio and tried to recreate it. And they couldn't come close to it. And these guys were PhDs. We literally grew up with this thing. I mean, I've got so many different stories. Some things happened back there, and then the city completely redid that whole area of land. The area that all this happened when I was growing up literally took them 2 years to put the concrete towpath down because things were happening. So a lot of my friends that were police officers and even the chief of police at the time was telling me what was going on down there, asking me if I knew how to handle it. And I'm like, just ignore it. I mean, it's not going to hurt you. It never did us, but I kind of look back now, it's like it played with us. You know, like we were its entertainment.
Let's just go ahead and get into it. Take us back to where it all started. How did this whole journey get started for you personally?
Well, I have to say that I got into it by stories. This is before the whole In Search of Leonard Nimoy with the Bigfoot and the Patty film. You know, obviously not before the Patty film, but before it aired and became national news and all that. Where I grew up, I spent every summer with my grandfather in this area that this happened. And he had about 1.5 acres of a backyard, just a long, narrow strip that went, you know, a good 300-400 feet from his house to a back alley. And beyond that was a farmer's field. To the left of his house was nothing but wilderness and woods. Now, mind you, this is in the city limits. So when I say wilderness and woods, I don't mean deep forest. But you could definitely spend a week down there and not be seen by anybody.
Yeah.
But my parents, you know, my dad, my uncles would tell us, you know, hey, don't go down there after dark. They'd tell us stories that they had, you know, that they grew up with the Grassman. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, the Grassman, you know, whatever. And I mean, some of their stories were pretty intense. And I wanted to believe it because I didn't think my dad, my uncle would mess with us the way that, you know, that way.
Sure.
But the biggest thing that happened is me and my cousin, like I said, we spent every summer over there. And my uncle was a Vietnam vet. So he showed us how to make lean-tos and cover our tracks. And, you know, when we're done camping down there, make it look like we weren't down there at all. You know, we learned all that stuff and I loved it. And we went ahead and was doing this for probably 3 years from the age of 10 till I was 13. We spent every summer down there a week at a time down in these woods, just camping and fishing the Erie Canal and just being kids, you know. And one day, me and my cousin were walking through a sand pit area, and there was a footprint that, at quick guess, I would say 18 to 19 inches long, and at least 6 inches deep. Now, it was soft ground, but me and my cousin, you'd leave your shoe print. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be a deep print. Well, this was a barefoot. And we seen one, and then we about 4 or 5 feet further up, we seen like the heel of another imprint, but it was going up rock at that time. So just the heel was into the earth. And we went back, got my uncle, and he came down there and looked at it and said, I don't want you guys coming down here tonight. So, you know, we hemmed and hawed, and, you know, okay, you know, well, they went to bed. And me and my cousin were like, let's go catfishing. Now it was about a 40. Now we really weren't thinking about the footprint at that time. It was about a 45-minute walk from my grandfather's house down the path to the canal. And we're walking down there and just, you know, BSing and kicking rocks. And about 15 feet up in front of us, we heard like a grunt, but a deep, full of bass, shake your bones style grunt. Now, mind you, we've been growing up back here, so we knew noises back here. Neither one of us ever heard that. We both stopped dead, didn't see anything, but just got this heavy, oh my God, we're going to die feeling. Well, we went back home. And we told my uncle about it, and he's like, I told you not to go back down there. So he had called my father, and the next night my dad came over after work. And I'll never forget this. He brought my younger brother with him, and then another uncle showed up. So now there's 3 adults and 3 kids. I'm like 12 years old at the time. My cousin's 13, and my younger brother is 9. So we go back there and we're thinking this is where they're going to try to scare us. You know what I mean? This is where, Dad's going to mess with us. So we go down there and we kind of split up a little bit. You go down about maybe a half mile, and there's a fork in this service road down there. Now, if you go to the right of the fork, in 20 minutes, you'll be on a main street. If you go to the left of the fork, you're walking the length of the canal. You'll go down to what we call the footbridge, and, just nothing but woods throughout. Okay, you got about 20 minutes before you hit the canal, but during all that, you're walking through woods and weeds and, So we kind of split up a little bit, and I end up with my uncle, and my cousin ends up with my dad, and we're not away from each other for more than maybe 10 minutes. And my dad and cousin start screaming bloody murder. And we, go back and we find each other. We're in the weeds. And, they're saying, we seen something. And I'm looking at my cousin, and he's kind of got this grin on his face. So I'm like, okay, you didn't see nothing. This is all part of the neighborhood dog went down there with us. Now, we're on one side of the path. And the path's about, 7-8 feet wide. It's a service road. And the dog's romping through the weeds on the other side of the path directly across from us. And we hear this dog would yelp and bark, but always playful. We heard this little dog just barking like it was going to tear something up. Then we heard a yelp, and then we heard this dog trotting through the weeds as fast as it can. It got about 2 steps out of the weeds on the road, and this big arm came out of the weeds and swung at this thing. It hit the hindquarters of the dog. The dog went like 5 feet in the air, spun around, hit the ground, and booked. I mean, it was gone. So we're all sitting there like in amazement and shock. Well, this thing's in a direct path to get back to my grandfather's. It's on that side of the service road. We're on the other. So we're sitting there for a little bit. We don't hear nothing. Well, we try to move through the weeds to stay hidden. And we get up to where the fork in the road's at. And my other uncle's missing. We can't find him. So we're down to 2 adults and 3 kids. So my dad and my uncle say, look, stay right here. You see anything, you go straight down this road. You get to Grandpa's. So my cousin comes up with this idea that, how like in Africa or something, animals will surround, get in a circle so they see all the sides.
Yeah.
So we do this in the fork of the road. Now, mind you, we're 13, 12, and 9. Okay,
Sure.
Well, we're thinking we're pretty intelligent right now. Like we got this thing planned out, and the service road is a great big white gravel, maybe the size of a hardball, and for baseball.
Yeah.
So we grab these rocks, and we're thinking, me and my cousin both play baseball. We were both on traveling leagues, so we knew the game, we knew how to throw. We're thinking we got this. This thing shows up, we just start plastering with rocks. Now this is all before the story of us knowing Bigfoot threw rocks. I mean, we're completely Bigfoot dumb at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And this thing comes out from the side of the weeds that we were on about 10 feet down the path from this fork in the road. So, I mean, it's close. And it takes 2 steps, and it's in the middle of the service road. And it just turns its shoulders and head and looks at us. Now, we're like, each one of us kids are facing a direction down the path. This thing is looking me dead in the eyes. So me and my cousin are firing these rocks at this thing, and it had to be the most epic, stupid maneuver I ever did. We could see these white rocks hitting this thing. It didn't make a grunt. It didn't make any inclination these things were hitting it. But we see the rocks hitting it. So it takes 2 steps, and now it's on the other side of the path, the service road, and it's where we have to go. It hits that, and there's a big old, I don't know if it's an oak or a birch, but there was a big old tree right there. And it like stood up against the tree and then vanished. Now, I'm not saying it disappeared, but it's almost like the tree and that thing became one in the dark, that you lost the silhouette of it.
Yeah.
And we're screaming, and we just take off the other way. Like I said, in a few minutes you'll hit a main road. And that's where we ran. It was the opposite direction. It was to a main road. We figured, we'll get our dad's attention as we're running, and eventually my dad and my uncle come out. They can't find my uncle. And they're like, okay, we're just going to walk down the main road back and then make a few turns and get back to Grandpa's house. So that's what we did. We stayed out of the woods. We walked in the middle of a 4-lane road. We ain't going nowhere near the woods. So we get back to my grandfather's house, and they each grab a gun, and they go down there and they start looking for my other uncle. Well, we heard 2 gunshots. Now, remember I told you this is city limits. So if gunshots go off, you're committing a crime. And we heard 2 gunshots go off, and we're sitting there waiting for our dads to come back. And my dad comes in with my uncle, and his shirt is just shredded, the whole front of it. And I guess this thing wanted to get past my dad without killing my dad, more or less, and just kind of took his hand and shoved him aside and past him. Now, my dad's chest was red, his shirt was ripped. No, a little bit of like scratches, but I don't know if that was from my dad falling or the actual thing pushing him. But that was the very first time that I realized they weren't BSing us. There's something back here. And I stayed out of the woods for a whole 6 months. And then after time, we're back in the woods again. But we literally grew up with it, knowing this thing was there. We'd get pelted with rocks, little rocks, nothing big, nothing that could hurt us. We'd go down there to camp. Like we'd hear, I don't want to say stick snapping. It sounded like trees breaking, but we never seen anything for a long time after that. But I mean, that sort of, excitement was scarier than all get out when it was going on. But after it was over, you kind of want to do it again.
Yeah.
And I guess that went on for like 5 years. I was 12 the first time I actually seen it. But we had, like I said, we go down there catfishing, we get pelted with rocks. I never heard no whoops or howls or anything like that. But you get a feeling, you know what I mean? Like you're being watched. There used to be wild dogs down there. We found dead wild dogs. We found deer with their heads ripped backwards. I thought everyone had, knew this was there, and I would talk to people about it. And the thing is now, that whole area that was woods has been flooded on purpose by the Park and Recreation Department of the state of Ohio.
So you think they did that to run these things out of there?
I know they did, and they didn't run them out of there. I almost think this thing, because it only happened from the months of June to mid-September, and then we'd have nothing happen in the winter. Nothing would happen in the winter. But the thing is, like I was telling you before we went on the air, they put a towpath in there. This is right along the Erie Canal, and it's probably 3 city blocks long from the one road to the other road that the towpath comes out on. Now, 3/4 of that was in, I call it the Grassman's home, the wooded area that we grew up in. It took 2 years for that, because when they had their equipment down there, there's always a path there for a towpath, but they can't, put pavement in there. They had a security company watching their equipment down there, after hours and at night. And the security company lasted 3 days and they quit. I mean, the entire company said, we're not coming back taking this account. So they had a couple off-duty Akron police officers go back there and do it. And I guess the hydraulic lines of these big dozers and backhoes were being ripped apart.
Oh, wow.
Not cut, but being pulled apart. And the tracks looked like someone was trying to pull the tracks off these bulldozers. They wouldn't get pulled off, but they get messed up enough to where hours to fix it, that sort of thing. And at the time, I was real good friends with the chief of police for Akron. And he said that they're just going to open up the pumps or turn off the pumps that goes to Firestone and let that flood. And to this day, it's still flooded. It took about 6 months for this whole thing to flood. And they keep it flooded because the pumps used to run the water from the canal into the Firestone plant to help cool the machines.
Yeah.
So that part of the canal would never freeze. But now that they've done that, when they run the pumps into the canal, the water will start to recede because they run it in for a couple weeks at a time and then open the pumps back up to fill up, the whole wooded area. But if you look it up, it's a blue herring preserve for blue herrings to nest.
So they've kind of secured it state level or federally.
That part is federally owned because the street that my grandfather lived on, they had put a couple businesses up, and all that land is federally owned. One of the guys that run a dump truck company has his shop back there, and he was telling me that he has to rent his parking lot from the federal government, federal parks.
Yeah.
And if they have a security camera, that the Park Service can have access to, the rent for his parking lot's only $100 a month. So there's something going on back there.
Clearly. And this isn't the first time I've heard about this type of situation occurring either. My old research area years ago, whenever I was a boots on the ground researcher, our main research area was inside of a national park here. And that park, they would go into very specific areas where there wasn't a lot of traffic, not a lot of public traffic, but they were areas that we frequented a lot because there was activity going on there. And they would shut them down for months on end to do these different projects or whatever. And they did all kinds of things. And one of the things that they did was shut down a huge trail system so they could go in and pave it. And it took them months and months and months to do. And another time they did like a controlled burn of the area and got rid of all the cedar trees in the area, which, was kind of a big deal where we were researching that. And they've just done projects like that all over the place, it seems. I was even looking at a map the other day, right outside of town to a spot that I was talking to a colleague about that I had visited years and years ago. And I was looking at it on, Google Maps recently to see what it looked like now. And they've done the same thing there. They've gone in and closed it down and paved it and clear cut it and everything else. And it's just awfully coincidental that happens.
Well, okay. You actually were on the ground, boots on the ground researcher. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the Joe Ball campsite? I think it's in Missouri.
It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. Well, one of the other podcasts that I used to listen to and communicated with, I can't think of the guy's name, but he wrote a book. Actually, he has a series of books out. And I started listening to him, and I kind of had to chuckle to myself because of, I'm an Army Ranger. Okay. I was in the Army. I was with the 74th Ranger Regiment. And we did a lot of stuff at Fort Lewis back when it was a military base in Washington State. And they sat us down our third night there and told us, now this came from my CO. And the sergeant major was right there. And my sergeant major had no sense of humor. So I can't see this being any type of joke. And he was telling us that Bigfoot are in the area. If you see one, don't try to follow it. Don't try to engage it. Don't try to harass it. It will leave you alone. Well, I don't know if you know anything about the military as far as, we have ranges that we shoot on.
Right.
But when you're out doing exercises inside the States, you're not given live ammo.
Right.
If we fire live ammo outside of a range area, it wakes a lot of people up in DC. There's no way you're going to get around it. But they flat out told us they're here. Don't try to track them. Don't try to engage them. You're talking to special forces. And you're a lot of the guys are like, yeah, right. Well, I've got history when I was growing up with these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I ain't engaging it. You know what I mean? There's but anyway, back to this Joe Ball campsite or campground. Army Corps of Engineers would shut it down every so often. But this guy wrote a book, and I can't think of his name, but he's an ex-police officer. And he's now into Bigfoot and Dogman and things like that. And he wrote this book called The Lakeview Monster or The Lakeview Man or something like that. It's based around, I don't know if you know her, like Doug Weiss, a different form of Bigfoot, supposedly like a face eater. Okay. It's based around one of those. And it's killing these kids and people in this town. And it's keeps going back to the Joe Ball campsite or campground. Well, the Joe Ball campground is real. I looked it up.
Oh, wow.
And the Army Corps of Engineers has shut it down due to safety reasons is all they would list it as. But this guy said he was out there doing the shoot for the book cover with his publicist. They were just taking pictures of the woods, not expecting to have anything happen. And on the interview I heard, he said he had a dog man standing in the woods that he didn't even see until they looked at the picture. But he won't post that picture. So I don't know how credible it is.
Right.
But in this story, this deputy sheriff is fighting this creature, these creatures, and the U.S. military comes in to help him. And it branched out into whole other stories of the U.S. military has a group with all the branches of the military that select people to come in and take out cryptids that have become a nuisance. And it kind of made everything click. My time at Fort Lewis, growing up, this sort of thing happening, with them flooding this area. And this is just my own opinion. I have nothing to base it on. But I don't think it's literally like the Pentagon and stuff keeping Bigfoot a secret. I think the organization that has the most to lose is the forestry industry.
Because of the dollars.
I mean, how much wood do they harvest out of the national forests? I know they pay buku buck to take lumber out of there. And if these things are proven and admitted to be real, you got to protect the habitat. So the forest, the lumber industry is going to take a hit. And in turn, the forestry industry is going to take a hit because they ain't going to be paid for all that. I don't know how anybody can say that for sure they're not real. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I said, I've had, that experience, actually seeing one. And what I seen, it was about 7.5 foot tall, but hunched over sort of. And its one arm was almost dragging the ground. But their hands are all the way down to their knees, at least. When that thing stood and looked at us, you could see the one hand swaying, and it had to be inches from the ground.
And it never made any like sounds or anything like that whenever you're hitting it with the rocks.
No, none at all. I mean, not even an inhale or a gas. But when it got to that tree, we heard it then. But It was nothing like what me and my cousin heard when we were walking out to go catfishing. That scared me. And that was even before I seen this thing. I mean, it scared me to death. And I think in Fort Lewis, when I was up there, if I would have heard that then, I'd have been begging to be discharged. I mean, I spent time, in Iraq, and it just, hearing that, knowing what I have, blanks at that. But the weapon that I had, I might as well be shooting a pea shooter at it. I've talked to guys that say they have shot it, but it didn't drop. And I'm like, well, what'd you have? Well, one guy shot it here in Akron with a 30-06 from about 60 yards out. And I'm like, I should have at least knocked it down.
Yeah.
I mean, and he goes, it screamed and ran off. And he goes, I know I hit it. And I'm like, I've seen this guy's trophy wall. He knows how to shoot. But when me and my wife had a chance to buy a house, I literally said, I want to live by the canal. So I bought a house. I am literally 5,000 feet from the canal. I'm like, I still go down there. You got to sneak in at night because, it's a park now and you can't be in it after dusk. But I mean, I go down there and I get the same feelings. Yeah, there's something back here, Whether I'll see it again, I don't know.
Now, we were talking earlier before we started recording. You were on Monster Quest years ago talking about the Ohio Grassman. Yep.
Season 3, episode 3.
How did that kind of all come about? And, I want to hear about the nests, man. What were those like?
Okay. Well, I've been more open with the whole Bigfoot subject. My dad had a lot more encounters than I did. Okay. And I don't feel right telling his encounters because anyone who listens says it's hearsay, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't there. But I believe it wholeheartedly. I mean, there's not a doubt. But back in 1995, we were listening. I don't know if you ever used to listen to Coast to Coast with Art Bell.
Oh, of course.
We used to listen to Art Bell religiously. And they had a guy over here, or a guy that was on the show that spent 5 weeks in the woods that kind of connect to where all my encounters happened. He spent 5 weeks back there and seen human, but nobody ever saw him. And, come to find out he was an ex-Green Beret. He was just going back there checking the food supply, seeing if something that big could live back there without being seen. And yeah, he did it. So we went ahead and reached out to this guy and wanted to tell him our story. Well, he put us in contact with a few researchers at Ohio State University. And there was Jody Cook was one of them, and then a couple other guys that I won't even say their names. But in 1995, they came up, and we took them back there. Now, that was before all this was flooded. You know, it was still woods. It was still like it was when I was growing up, you know. And we were telling our stories to the guys and showing them where certain things happened and where we used to camp. And there's those big metal towers that they run high tension wires along.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those back there. And we were walking that path, you know, the cut path that they make for all those. And we were, you know, walking through all that and showing, you know, the guys the story. Well, we walk into this edge of this weed line, and right there's a nest. And they're like, well, what is that? And I'm like, well, I call it Bigfoot's tent. And they're like, what? I said, we see these all the time, and they're all made like this, and they're all laid down inside with twigs that have been carried to them. They're not from trees that are around this, you know, they've been laid in there. And the nest was about 15 foot long, about 6.5 foot high, and was almost like a dome. But it was completely covered, all but a little hole about 3 foot in diameter. I mean, you literally had to get down and crawl into it. But you couldn't see anything. Like, you get in there, you can't see it. You know, you're completely hid. And they're like, man, I would love to go inside that. And I'm like, there ain't no way. I'm not going inside that. You know, that hole, you won't be able to see me in there. If something's in there, you know. So they kind of made the hole bigger. And they're like, yeah, there's nothing in there. You know, they had a FLIR, and they're shining a FLIR in there. And there's like, we got no heat signature. You know, it's 12 degrees cooler in there than it is out here. And so I said, all right, you make the hole big enough and all three of you guys are standing right there, then I'll get in there. Well, I got in there and they took a picture of me in there. And that is the picture that airs on the Ohio Grassman episode.
So what was it like inside of there?
Everything was, there's probably 5 inches of padding on the floor, on the ground. I mean, there was sticks, there was leaves, there was, I mean, just, it was like a bed, literally. 5 inches of padding. I mean, you step in it, you sink.
Wow. There
was moss in there, but you're in there. No, I was scared to death. I ain't gonna lie. I got in there and the stench was on God in there. Just, it's almost like a wet dog sulfur trash smell, you know, all in one. But it was rank in there, so I didn't stay there very long. But I could literally, you lose contact with the outside when you're in there. It was so well built, and it just, I mean, I leaned on the side of it, and nothing, it didn't fall over. My hand didn't go through it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a weird feeling being in there.
How many of these things were there?
We found 2 of them when we had those guys down there.
Right there at the same spot?
No, they were probably about 1,000 yards apart, like in the edge of a clearing, like on the weed line, but the edge of a clearing. And then the other one was on another clearing on the other side of the wood, you know, like the other side of the cut path for the towers.
Yeah.
Like they were opposite sides of that cut path. Like if they're in there looking, they're both looking at the cut path. So I don't know if it would be like an ambush spot, but it was kind of comical because they're like, well, I don't know. It could be just like tumbleweed. There ain't no tumbleweed being built like that. Not that big, not that hollow, no padding, you know. But Jody Cook called up me and my dad about 2.5 months later and said, look, don't talk to those guys no more. They're running around with your story. You know, there was a write-up. Somebody wrote a book. One of the guys that did this with us wrote a book, Bigfoot in Ohio. And basically word for word told me and my dad's story. They changed our names, obviously, because I would have sued them so quick and made their head spin. But then the Akron Beacon Journal picked it up and ran a story about it. And I ended up calling that reporter saying, look, this is not how it went. This is not this. This is not this. And she later on got involved with podcasting. And after I gave my story to another podcast, she came on the air a week later and said that I was full of crap, that area was always flooded like that, it was more flooded than not flooded, that the pictures that I talk about in Monster Quest are not taken there, that I'm like, okay, So I contacted Jody Cook and asked him for the coordinates because he went back up there a couple of times. And he actually GPSed and pin dropped the coordinates. And I sent it to her. I said, "You say any more stuff like this, I'm gonna put this out. You're lying. You're trying to benefit your own career. Yeah, I mean, I had police chief involved. I had police officers involved because they were told don't go down there without 3 or 4 backup units with you and carry as heavy weapon as you want to carry." So they know there's something back there.
Yeah, this wasn't just an area where you and your family were claiming stuff was happening. Other people were experiencing it too in this same area.
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, there was a guy that used to drive an old German staff car when I was little. And he used to drive down because the road after my grandfather's turned into a dirt road. And the only thing down at the other end of this dirt road was a junkyard. He would go down there, park, and then drink. And we'd see him go down there at night and come back the next morning after he, woke up or sobered up, whichever the case may be. And there was a couple times that we heard him hollering and hooping and his car would be flying up the street. And we're like, yep, Grassman got him. But one night he come running up the street, left his car down there, and we never seen him again. We watched him run past my grandpa's house. I was probably 19 at the time. Watched him run past my grandfather's house. Yeah, I was, because I was home on leave. It was right around Christmas. And he come running past my grandfather's house, and he never went back out his car.
Wow.
A week later, my grandfather said a tow company came down and got it. But it goes back to we never had anything happen after middle of September. So I don't know if that's what scared him but something spooked him out that, he took pride in that old German staff car, man. And he just up and left it.
I know there's no way to really know for sure, but do you think something happened specifically to cause them to decide to go in there and tear the place up and flood it out?
Well, I think if they were going to open it up like they did, I mean, it's a major walking path. And I really think that when they went down there, according to the people I've spoke with, I'm not going to say their name, but a couple of them were council members at the time. One's the mayor, then the police chief. They were having so much happen to the equipment down there that they stopped that part of the towpath, skipped over it, and flooded that before the company come back in and just lay the pavement down. Now, once that happened, it only took them 2 days to lay the pavement down. But it took them 2 years to get those 2 days in. But I honestly think the wrong person got scared down there. And that's when they kind of like, okay, we got to figure something out. Because there's too many houses around. You can't go down and hunt it. And you can't fly a black helicopter in here and nobody see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have that luxury. So you got to do something else. But I honestly believe that, yeah. I mean, all that areas, there's mines all over the place around here. And there's a trestle down there that literally, if you go down that trestle, you could drive a Volkswagen Bug in it and come up all the way out past Akron Canton Airport, about 35, 40 miles. So there's tunnel systems, there's caves, there's mines. I think flooding it was the easiest way to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks because it was beautiful back there. I mean, there was weeping willows. There was a little pond in the center, about in the center of this wooded area. I mean, it was great. I mean, that was my childhood. And the documentary I filmed with Small Town Monsters, we went down there and filmed it on the towpath. And we're telling the guy, me and my dad both, this is all woods. You couldn't see all this, Now it's just dead trees that are, haven't fallen over yet. And there's no way you need a herring sanctuary. I'm sorry.
No. No, I mean, here in Oklahoma, those things are everywhere.
Well, they're everywhere here too. That's what I mean. Why do you need a sanctuary? So it kind of makes me think that there's some shoddy stuff going on.
You mentioned earlier, hearing sticks breaking and getting little pebbles thrown at you and stuff whenever you were down there. What was going on whenever they're throwing stuff at you specifically?
Um, it was usually after midnight, and it only happened in certain areas. Like if we'd start getting pelted with rocks and we'd move 500 feet down the canal, they wouldn't follow us. So I want to think that it was a kind warning. Hey, you're too close to something, or you're messing up what we have going on, or you know what I mean. It was.
Yeah.
I never, other than that one time, when I was 12 and actually seen it, because I don't know who you are, but that's going to scare anybody.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a Bigfoot researcher or not. When you're 10 to 12 feet away from this thing, you can't help but be scared. I mean, it was a sickening feeling in my gut, when we heard that. And, that's before I knew anything about that infrasound thing and things like that. But I almost think, if I think back, me and my cousin might have been hit with something like that. Now, I don't know, but I'm just spitballing here because we both felt sick to our stomach, dizzy. Now, I know fear can do that too. And it was either fear or we got hit with infrasound, but it was just a sickening feeling. The one time we were down at the footbridge, which literally is just a drain pipe, like a 4-foot diameter drain pipe, and a graded walkway over it that goes about 15 feet across the canal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we were down there standing on that. And there was me, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin again. We were inseparable. We were standing down there and we heard something moving through the swampy area, the sloshing, and we're waiting for somebody to walk out, a homeless guy or, something. Because it's probably been 6-8 months before anything's happened. We just kind of, it's moved on. It's not here. And all of a sudden we started hearing, and I don't want to say sticks. I want to say these are at least saplings being snapped. Because it would echo. It literally would sound like a shotgun going off. And we're like, what? We all instantly thought what it was, without saying, the Grassman's back. But it felt completely different that time than any other. Like this was a very strong warning, get out. Like, okay, if there's a nest back there that's a breeding nest or a nursery, we might have been too close.
Yeah.
And we took its warning after about 10 of those things snapped, and we were like, okay, we're going to go ahead and leave. Let's just walk along the path, which is now the tow path. But, it was just a 4-foot path along the canal, the bank there. We're just going to walk along here. We made noise the whole time we were going, and we were being paced out. Never seen it, but heard it. It was walking probably 10 foot in the woods, right with us. Didn't grunt, didn't make any aggressive sounds, but you could hear it walking. It wasn't hiding the fact that I'm walking you out.
And how long did it pace you guys?
All the way to the edge of the woods by my grandfather's house. I mean, all the way out.
Wow.
And it never did that before. You know what I mean? It would mess with us. We'd hear it, but usually once we made the turn, like we're heading back to my grandfather's street, and you could see the street lights and stuff, we wouldn't hear anything after that. This thing went all the way up until we crossed over a steel cable that blocked the road from the service road there. And it all the way up. I mean, we crossed over that wire that stretched across, and it was probably 75 yards to my grandfather's house. He was the first house on the street. And we heard that thing all the way up until we hit the driveway. Then we didn't hear it no more.
Now, do you think that was kind of like a boundary for them, or do you think they'd come up around the houses and stuff?
Oh, I knew they come up around the houses. There used to be apartment projects. There was my grandfather's house, another house, and then 4 apartment complexes right there, like 4 apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And we would see the thing in the farmer's field behind my grandfather's house. We would see it in the back, by the woods right along the apartment buildings. I mean, it didn't hide from us. It's almost like we're friends. I know them, they know me.
Yeah.
Now, not the type of friends where I'm going to go hang out with, but I almost think that they were used to us because we spent so much time back there. And with what my uncle showed me and my cousins, we took care of where we were at. We didn't come back there and trash the place. We didn't, you know what I mean? We respected the wood.
Yeah.
And I almost think that was, okay, these guys are okay. Now, if we started wandering around, that's usually when crap would happen. Nope, don't come this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it'd make a few things. We'd turn around and leave us alone. So I don't know. I don't want to say it was friendly. I mean, I've seen, like I said, there was junkyard dogs. There was wild dogs back there. Their heads were just like you grab the bottom of their jaw and pull their head all the way back to their back. We've seen like 20 of those dogs throughout my time back there, just ripped apart.
And this was out in the woods, or?
Yeah, the junkyard dog, the back of the junkyard didn't have a fence. So they would come out into the woods, but they wouldn't mess with you until you got to to the junkyard.
Yeah.
But they were all over the place. Years later, I met a guy that used to work nights at the junkyard as a night watchman. And he said he fired his 357 at something out there that was making all kinds of noise and banging on metal. And, I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what it was because you're not going to believe me anyway. But, your 357 wouldn't have done nothing. So.
Now, I know you don't want to retell your dad's stories, but with this being your grandfather's house, the events that happened to your dad and your uncle and everything, was this the same area?
Yes. My dad moved into that house. He was born in 53. They moved in there in 56. So he spent his whole life, my grandfather moved out there in 99 is when he moved out of his house. So all that time we were back there, I'm 55 now. And from I turned 8 in 78. So from 78 on, I would go camp back in those woods, even by myself. Times were different, but yeah, I would even go camp there by myself.
So stuff was happening in this general area for years and years and years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's kind of rare that you find places like that.
Well, the thing is, if you draw, I don't know if you're familiar with Ohio, but you go from the Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area, which is basically the whole top of Ohio in patches. But the big area, if you draw a straight line from there to Salt Fork State Park, which is a Bigfoot hotspot in Ohio, my little section's right, you got to go right through it.
Right in the middle.
So I almost think that they're migrating and they just spent some time back there.
You think that's like a travel corridor?
I do. I really do.
Yeah, I do have some friends up in Ohio that actively research, and I can't talk about it too much, out of respect for them, giving away locations and everything. Like you're saying, Salt Fork has become a well-known hotspot, a little too well-known for a lot of people.
Exactly.
But there are a lot of areas that connect up to Salt Fork that activity is happening, and they're finding all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's like Hocking Hills here in Ohio is starting to have a lot of, activity. Ashland County, Ohio is having a lot of activity. The thing that amazes me about the whole Bigfoot community, you got so many people that if you don't believe they're part of it, then you're not a believer.
Right.
And that's the wrong way to do any type of scientific research. I mean, well, he's come out and said it, and it's already been known. I mean, I don't know if you're affiliated with the BFRO or anything like that, but Matt Moneymaker went to school in Akron. Okay.
Yeah.
He graduated from the university here. He knows about my story. He's like, if there's any, I don't know what they call it now, the woo or whatever, I don't want to hear it. Leave that part out. Well, no, there's not really any woo, but if there was, it's part of the story. It goes with it.
Right.
And I just want to, you got to be open to it. I'm not necessarily saying I believe Bigfoot's an alien or can teleport or anything like that, but I'm not opposed to it either. If something happens to change my mind, then so be it.
I've talked to a lot of people and, there's, a handful that I very much value and respect their opinions and theories on the subject. However, I have yet to meet anyone that I believe they know for sure one way or the other about any aspect of it. There's a few things we can tell you for sure, that they're out there, that they can walk upright, that they're covered in hair. We know that much from eyewitness accounts and everything, but beyond that, I don't think anybody knows anything.
Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, the one full-on visual I had, the thing was massive. I mean, I hear people say 400 or 500 pounds. Man, I'm even pushing more than that. I'm saying 800, 900, maybe 1,000 pounds. Wow. As bulky as this thing is. I mean, now I get it. Weight's hard to guess. And, I was young, but just the sheer mass alone, and everybody knows muscle weighs more than fat. And the thing didn't look fat. It looked muscular, and it left me in awe. Now, I watched the film of Patty, and I'm not saying real or not to that because I wasn't there. To me, it looks convincing as all get out. But I've also seen some other videos on the internet that if AI wasn't around, I would say, yeah, that could be it. But now that AI is so relevant and popular with everybody, I almost look at every video on the internet as most likely AI.
Yeah, videos and photographs and things like that at this point are just for entertainment purposes only, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just the unfortunate reality of it, unless I'm involved in taking the footage myself, or it's, somebody I know personally. Here's
the thing that also gets me. Everyone's like, why is the picture always so blurry? Why is it always so out of focus? I can tell you firsthand. Okay, I mean, I've been in firefights. Okay, your blood pressure goes up. You lose feeling in your fingertips. If you're trying to hold a camera still, and every muscle in your body is contracting and shaking, every picture is going to be out of focus. It's going to be blurry. It's going to be, even if that's what you're going out there to find, when you see it, if you've never seen it before, you're not prepared. And I mean, it's been years since I've seen it. Okay. But I am not going to lie to you. If I see it again, I'm probably going to be just as scared as I was the first time I seen it. But it doesn't change the fact that I know what I'm looking at.
Whenever you talk about the size and the mass of the one that you saw, that you got a clear view of, you mentioned earlier about it kind of blending into the tree and you lost its silhouette and couldn't see it anymore. Something that large, how did you lose its silhouette against a tree?
This wasn't a little tree, okay? I mean, granted, it was bigger than the trunk width-wise. I mean, the shoulders had to be 3.5, 4 foot across.
Right.
Okay. And when this thing went against the tree, it didn't just stop. Okay. It kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. Picture yourself walking against the tree. Instead of going around it, you almost hug it to go around it. I didn't see it go past it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it could have put itself the tree between you and itself, and you kind of use the tree as a blind spot.
Yeah, but he is wider than the tree. Now, like I told you before, I'm Army Ranger. I was a 75th Ranger Regiment. I know how to look at silhouettes. I learned this after this incident. Like I said, I was 12 years old when this happened.
Right.
But when I'm at Fort Lewis, now, mind you, like I said, I only have blinks, and we're on a training op. Okay, 5 days out in the woods. All you have is your ruck and your gear. I don't think I had a good night sleep during that, whole time out there, because I'm laying there and I'd look up and you see a tree and then you like blink and the trees doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
Now I'm trained to look for silhouette. You know what I mean? It got to the point where I would keep my night vision on the whole time. They're like, you're going to burn batteries out. I'm like, I don't care. I can see. Oh, you're not letting that story get to you. Just stop. Yes, I am. You know what I mean? You don't understand.
Right.
It's not that I was going to do anything if I got another look at it, but I still wanted to get a look at it. Yeah, I want to see what's going to kill me if that be the case. I don't believe that every Bigfoot out there could be a monstrous killer. I almost think that they're like a human. There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's ones you just don't know about. And I kind of think it's the same with them. I mean, you get down in the southern parts of the country, and the Bigfoot down there seem a little bit more mischievous. I don't want to say violent, but more mischievous. You get to the Pacific Northwest, where there's not as many people, it has more room to roam. They're more shy and try to stay away from humans. And I think the ones in the eastern part, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, kind of look at humans as a little nuisance. Not going to do anything to you, but yeah, you might be able to mess with them a little bit. Don't give them a little bit. Don't give them too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where is your thoughts at this point in life about what these things are?
Again, just my thoughts, my opinions. I think they're flesh and blood. I just think they're another form of animal. I mean, in between the great apes and us. If you'd have to put them on the evolution thing, I think they're in between like the great apes and us.
Do you think they'll ever be proven to exist?
I think so. I really do. I think so. I think it's going to get to the point where they can't deny it anymore. I mean, I believe there are scientists out there that have proof, but are being told, you don't share that. I mean, I don't think it's going to be proven on a TV show. I mean, I love watching Expedition Bigfoot, but that's strictly entertainment.
Right.
They're not going to prove it on that because, I mean, if they were to prove it, I mean, the last season was pretty cool how it ended with the footage, but TV show's over. If you prove it, no point in having a TV show. So I think that those shows like Finding Bigfoot and Expedition Bigfoot and the whole Josh Gates thing, I think it's strictly entertainment. I mean, Josh Gates got some pretty good proof of the Yeti, and he got laughed at. But I mean, I really think there's scientists out there that already know. And I'm not talking just about Jeff Meldrum and things like that. I mean, actual biologists and zoologists, I think they know it's there. But they out of reputation alone, I mean, the government can ruin anybody. And if that's your livelihood and you come out and say, yeah, it's real, your livelihood's gone.
Yeah, there's no money in it for sure.
No.
For people trying to prove it, especially in the scientific community. I mean, that's something that's obviously talked about, a lot about how to get scientists on board and everything. Well, scientists, that's their job. It's not just a hobby for them, and they get funding to research and do certain things. And if they're not getting funded to do that, that's just the way it is. So,
well, let me turn it back on you. What's your thoughts on it? I mean, obviously you believe or no. I mean, but
oh yeah,
do you think it's going to be proven?
I don't think so. I'm kind of the mindset that they already know. the powers that be, whoever they are, already know these things are out there, because I know they're out there. You know they're out there. If two guys like us can go out there and have an encounter and sightings and see these things, and all these other people have, then of course they know they're out there. They've already studied them. They've already captured one. For whatever reason, they've decided we're not supposed to know about them. And so I just think that's the way it is. I think that's how it's always going to be.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong. You're probably not, but I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too.
I long for the day where, I'm watching the news and they break in and, breaking news: Bigfoot is now proven to exist. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm going to keep on fighting the good fight.
I got a long list of people I'm going to call if that ever happens. See, I told you.
Yeah.
Call some of my army buddies. See, I wasn't overreacting.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and talking to me, man.
Hey, it was a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can explain and you'd like to share your story on the podcast, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.